Hey there, everybody. It's KB5MIQ Big Boy. Want to go ahead and try to go on Ham Radio Cat. I'm gonna go ahead and try to wrap up this technician question pool today. I'm not gonna read all of them anymore. Gonna get in some of them. It's gonna get kind of dry to have to read the answers on, and I'm not really positive how I could explain a lot of them better than what is on here. But I'm gonna hit some highlights on these. I'm going to get through all of them, and I'm going to give you a little talk about proper ways to study and hopefully pass your tech test. So, and any of you guys watching this that are new techs, it's good information you can have if you've got questions about. And please help somebody that's trying to study. Get them watch this, and maybe they can get some ideas on studying. Okay, the new ham licensing. For which license classes or new licenses are currently available from the FCC? They've dropped them from a couple of them from years ago, so the only license classes available from the FCC today are technician, general, and amateur extra. All right, if you want to have a vanity call sign, any licensed amateur can ask for one. Okay, let's see. When are you allowed to operate an amateur station in a foreign country? When the foreign country authorizes it. So you can't just automatically go to a foreign country and use your license. You got to get permission and probably get some kind of their license or an add-on for yours to be able to operate there. All right, that's under FCC licensing. Your license lasts for 10 years when you get it. Now, even though they're going to start charging us for them, still 10-year license for $30, $3 a year. There's a 2-year grace period after which the license may be renewed. They don't send out copies of license anymore, and I really don't like that. You have to go in there and print it off yourself. You can print an official copy off. But how soon after passing exam for your first radio license may you operate a transmitter on amateur radio frequency? As soon as your license call sign appears in the database. If your license expired and still within the allowable grace period, you may continue to operate on amateur radio frequency. No transmitting is not allowed until FCC shows that you have been renewed. So once you let it go out, even though you got a 2-year grace period, you can't keep operating. Okay, let's go down here. Some of these questions are just, you're going to have to just study and try to remember the answer on some of them, because they're stuff that you normally not going to use on a regular basis. All right. What amateur stations can automatically retransmit the signals of other stations? Repeater, auxiliary, or space stations? All right. Let's see. All right, control mode. When is an amateur station permitted to transmit without a control operator? Never. Okay? If you're a tech class and you're at a station with an amateur extra and he's going to let you talk on his radio, he is a control operator of that station. And even though you can talk in a band you're not authorized under with him there, I don't recommend it. I'm going to give you a perfect example of that. When I was a novice tech, we set a special event station up, and we set it up, and I run the 10-meter band. Some other higher class licenses run the other bands. So you're not permitted to operate without a control operator on any band you're not authorized on. Hey, Ham Radio Cat. Aaron, old buddy, old Ham Radio Cat's up here today. What determines the transmitting privileges of an amateur station? The class of the operator license held by the amateur. What is the amateur station control point? The location at which the control operator function is performed. Under normal circumstances, may a technician class licensee be the control operator of a station operating in the exclusive extra class segment of the bands. At no time you can do that. It's when the control operator is not the station licensee who is responsible for proper operation of the station. The control operator and the station licensee are equally responsible. All right, repeater operations, example of an automatic control. You can operate what is the following example of remote control defined in Part 97, operating a station over the internet. All right, station identification, repeaters, third-party club stations, FCC inspection. When must station licensee make the station and its records available for FCC inspection? At any time upon request by the FCC. They're the ones granting your license. They have the right to do that. When using tactical identifiers such as race headquarters during community service, how often must your station transmit the station's FCC assigned call sign? At the end of each communication and every 10 minutes during a communication. When is an amateur station required to transmit its assigned call sign? At least every 10 minutes during and at the end of a communication. Like if you're having a QSO on 10, we'll be talking, like Jeff and Cody and I, and every so often one will say, KB5 MIQ for ID, and just keep on talking. All right. Here's something that you probably have seen questions on. What method of call sign identification is required for a station transmitting phone signals? Voice or CW ID? If you listen to a 2-meter repeater every 10 minutes, you may hear a Morse code burst. That's actually the station call sign IDing itself. Not all repeaters have the fancy computer-generated voice on them now. Back when I got into this, they was all just CW burst transmissions that ID'd the repeater. All right. Alrighty, let's see. What type of amateur station simultaneously retransmits the signal of another amateur station on a different channel or channels? That's a repeater, like a 2-meter 440 repeater. All right. What is the following common repeater frequency offset in the 2-meter band? Plus or minus 600 megahertz. Below 147, it's usually a minus shift. Above 147, it's usually a plus shift. The national calling frequency for 2 meters FM simplex, 146.52. What is the common repeater frequency offset in the 70 centimeter band? Plus or minus 5 megahertz. All right. What is meant by repeater offset? A repeater goes in on a frequency listening, like on channel, we'll call it, say 146.84 is the received frequency it's listening on. But when it retransmits, it offsets it down 600 kilohertz, and it's going to come out, I'm going to say, if I can't do the math right, 146.24. That's the transmit, but you'll only hear it on the 8.4 frequency. It's a duplex, does it simultaneously, and that way it doesn't interfere with each other. That helps the repeater side of it. It's just how repeaters work. I need a very good explanation, but all right. What term describes an amateur station as transmitting and receiving on the same frequency? Simplex. Okay. What is the most common use of reverse split function of a VHF-UHF transmitter? Listen on a repeater's input frequency. All right. What might be the problem if a repeater user says your transmissions are breaking up on voice peaks? You could be talking too loudly and overdriving your radio, overdriving your mic. Which of the following applies when two stations transmitting on the same frequency interfere with each other? Common courtesy should prevail, but no one has absolute right to an amateur frequency. Kind of rule of thumb is if somebody's already there, don't start talking over them. Just tune down something else. Even like when we start our 10-meter roundtable at night, we may not hear anybody, and all of a sudden the band will shift and somebody's running a net on the East Coast on that frequency. We'll move, even though we may We don't know who was really there first, but we're just talking. We can move. We'll be courteous and move up and let them have the frequencies. That way we don't want to interfere with their net. That's just the main thing that needs to happen. This service is be courteous. It doesn't hurt to move. A lot of guys don't agree with that. All right. Where may single sideband phone be used in amateur bands above 50 megahertz? In at least some portion of all these bands. When do FCC rules not apply to the operation of an amateur station? Never. FCC rules always apply. What is meant by the term NCS used in net operation? It's net control station. That's the guy running the net that everybody checks in with. All right, let's see. What is the following accepted method to get the immediate attention of a net control station reporting an emergency? Begin your transmission by saying priority or emergency with your call sign. What is the following a characteristic of good traffic handling? Passing messages exactly as received. Anybody that's in the military, like I was for years running radios, that's very important. Okay. Here's a signal that you need to here's an area you really need to learn a lot. Radio wave characteristics, how radio signal travels, multipath polarization wavelength. Okay. All right. What antenna polarization is normally used for long distance, weak signal CW and single sideband contacts in the VHF, UHF bands? Horizontal. What can happen if the antennas at opposite end of VHF, UHF line of sight radio link are not using the same polarization? This applies to HF too. Signals can be significantly weaker. Oh, hold on a second. Oh, I had a phone call there. I had somebody I was trying to track down I need to talk to. Talking about different polarization antennas. This applies for line of sight, ground wave, whatever you want to call it. This applies to HF, VHF, and UHF. There's 30 dB of loss between a vertical polarized antenna and a horizontal polarized antenna. Now, remember, most of your antennas on your cars are vertical. And your ever 2-meter repeater I've ever seen put up, 440 is polarized vertical. That's what everybody uses for line to make them extend the range further. Now, if you get in a position where you're trying to talk like on a 10-meter mobile, and you want to talk to somebody that's in a shack, it's on a horizontal antenna, you're not going to get any distance out of it because there's that much difference in loss. So remember that. Nothing wrong with operating a vertical HF antenna. Not wrong with operating a horizontal HF antenna. They both work great on skip. But if you're trying to talk line of sight, everybody has to be the same. So remember that. Okay. What type of wave carries radio signals between transmitting and receiving stations? Electromagnetic. All right. You've got... What part of the atmosphere enables propagation of radio signals around the world? The ionosphere. That's what causes your skip signals. All right. Let's see. There's all kinds of electronic stuff coming on here that you really just need to study. I'm trying to find... What are the frequency limits for the VHF spectrum? 30 to 300 megahertz. UHF spectrum are 300 to 3000 megahertz. The HF spectrum frequency range is 3 to 30 megahertz. All right. Why are direct UHF signals rarely heard from stations outside your local coverage area? UHF signals are usually not reflected by the ionosphere. What is the following advantage of HF versus VHF and higher frequencies? Long distance ionospheric propagation is more common on HF. All right. Let's see. There's all kinds of stuff in here on different types and when bands work better, and you really need to get into that and study that. Amateur radio practices and setups. What must be considered to determine the minimum current capacity for a transceiver power supply? Efficiency of the transmitter at full output power, receiver and control circuit power, power supply regulation, heat dissipation. All those choices are correct. You've got to have a big enough power supply to run your shack. In fact, buy a bigger one so you got room to expand. Computers can be used amateur radio station for logging contacts, contact information, sending and receiving CW, for generating and decoding digital. All them choices are correct. Why should wiring between the power source and the radio be heavy gauge wire kept as short as possible? That stops voltage drop. That's what that's all about. Because if you have big enough wire, if your voltage is going to drop, it's going to pull more heat and you got a chance of burning something up. What's the proper location for an external SWR meter? In series with the feed line between the transmitter and the antenna. All right. All kinds of other stuff here to look into. What happens if a transmitter is operated with the mic gain set too high? The output signal might be distorted. Classic example is radio I've got here. The mic gain is set at 50 on all modes. You got to set it for whatever mode you're on. Sideband mic gain, FM mic gain, AM mic gain, digital mic gain. That's 50 with the standard factory mic. When I changed this heel boom set mic, I had to turn it down to about 14 because I was just chopping all the pieces. People tell you your audio will sound like crap. You're overdriving too much mic gain. Which of the following can be used to enter the operating frequency on a modern transceiver? The keypad or VFO knob? Okay. Which of the following controls use the voice pitch of a single sideband signal seems too high or low? RIT or clarifier? And what that is, the RIT is actually receive incremental tuning. That's what my old radio called it. This new radio calls it a clarifier. All it is, if you're transmitting on 28,450, and this has happened with HKV and myself, and he's transmitting on 28,450. All right, there's nothing that says that both radios are exactly on the same frequency. Sometimes he may sound a little high or low pitch. You can take your RIT or clarifier and tune it, and it'll change your receive frequency a few hertz one way or the other until he sounds normal. But when you transmit, you're still transmitting on 28,450 or whatever frequency you had it set at. All that's for is to clarify receive signal. All other stuff, electronics, electrical principles, it's just going to take some studying. I can talk about that, but it's just going to be me giving you answers, so I'm not going to get into that. Different how volts versus microvolts. This is stuff you need to know, but me reading the answers is not going to help you learn it. We're going to talk a little bit about some study practices here in just a minute. All right. Ohm's law, voltage. The Ohm's law is a very good practice to learn for this or any kind of electrical stuff you do in life. I've been an electrician and use it all the time. You got to learn electrical circuits. You'll need to know what a resistor, capacitor, things like that, how they work. You'll have to learn that. Transistors, what does the abbreviation FET stand for? Field effect transistor. What is a term that describes a device's ability to amplify a signal? Then there's a whole section on circuit diagrams. I can't cover that here because I don't have a good way to show you diagrams right now because, like I said, my audio-visual skills. What is meant by PTT? The push-to-talk function that switches between receive and transmit. It's your mic button. What to do if you're told your FM handheld or mobile transceiver is over-deviating? Talk further away from the microphone. And that's where you have to know how much gain your mic has got. I have a tendency to eat a mic. I learned that in the military and armor. I was in mechanized infantry for a number of years, and our mics and our CVC helmets were designed, we had to touch our lips with them because that's where it picked your voice up and didn't pick up the sound of the vehicle running. So I have a tendency to eat a mic, and I have to keep my gain turned down or I'm too loud. And I talk loud on the radio too. That's another military trait. All right. A lot of stuff about filtering, overload. What if your neighbor's saying you're causing problems with his TV and things like that? You just need to learn all this stuff as you go through. It's one of the other sections. Antenna measurements, troubleshooting. What's the purpose of a dummy load? Dummy load's nothing but a 50 ohm resistor that you can transmit into, and they're rated, got a duty cycle. The best one is the old gallon of oil that you can put a kilowatt into. Personally, I've got a MFJ dry dummy load. And this one, that's just a dry dummy load. It'll handle up to 1,500 watts for 10 seconds and 100 watts for 600 seconds. It's a good way to test your radio without having to actually transmit over the air. General terms, what in general terms is standing wave ratio? The measurement of how well a load is matched to a transmission line. You have to have a 50 ohm match. What reading on the SWR indicates a perfect match, antenna and feline, 1-to-1. You got other stuff here that you need to learn. Basic repairs, multimeter, good, everything on a good multimeter is what will help you out a bunch. A lot of mode transmissions for digital, satellite, FM, amateur satellite use. It's just stuff you need to gonna have to understand to get your practice to be able to pass your test. A lot of information, and they're only gonna pick maybe a couple, 3 questions off each section. All right, so we're gonna call that good on question pool. Well, dadgummit, I missed something, but I'm not gonna go back to it. All right, something on taking this test for the first time, technician class test. Get you an ARRL tech handbook to learn this with, okay? Read it, get used to reading the answers, look up the information. Then, before you go take the test, go to QRZ and take practice tests. They got a practice test generator for each class license. Take them, write down your answers, write down how many you get right, and when you can consistently pass multiple practice tests on QRZ, you shouldn't have any problem passing the test. Now, once you go and take your tech test, and if this rule hasn't changed, I highly recommend you do this. It used to be you pay one test fee. As long as you're passing, you keep testing. And it don't matter if you had studied for general, take the general test. If you fail it, you've got some exposure to what's on the test, and you know what to study for. Get your general class book and go on. Now, let me caution you on a couple of things of studying, on how to study for one of these tests. Now, this is an ARRL handbook. All right? Everybody should have one. In fact, we're going to give one of them away one day. But it's going to be an overload of information. Now, what I'm about to say may get the experts' heads exploding. But that's the reason I tell you to take practice tests. These are multiple choice answers, and you're going to have to pick the right answer out of what the offers they give you when you take the test. Reason this for a prop. This is an old 1991 National Electric Code book. All right. All that is information. National Electric codes change every year. All right. If you take a code test, you have to get your answers out of that, and you have to look the answers up. They're not multiple choice. What I'm saying, though, they make a National Electric Code handbook, which is kind of big and similar to this ARRL handbook. I used to teach electricity. night in a vocational class I used to teach at night. Had one guy that was smart and could have passed code tests, but he's hard-headed. He used the National Electric Code Book handbook to take his test with. And he was consistently writing the wrong answers down and wanted to argue with us. Even the handbook had the correct answers for a question highlighted, and he would get the information in his head and he would write down this other answer that wasn't right, even though in theory he could have been right, but to get the question right, you had to answer it correctly. That's the reason I say use the tech book from ARRL or Gordon West. I use Gordon West books. I guess they're still available. But use the tech book, pass your tech test, go ahead and take general. But be sure to go on QRZ and take those random tests. Just do a random tech test and take them over and over. Tell them, want to print you another. You don't have to print them. You just take them on the computer. It'll tell you right then whether you pass or fail. If you want to take you a script sheet and write notes down while you do it, that's good. But you're not going to be able to take them notes in with you. So just take the test over and over again and you'll get it in your head. Also, have the book to back up your information on. I hope this is helpful. I was going to do the entire tech question pool the way I had started, but it was going to take about 9 more videos to do that in, and I was just getting to a point where I'd just be reading answers, and I really didn't know the best way to explain it in the way I do my videos. So I appreciate HKV for the ideas helping me with this, and Cody, W5DLX, for all the help they helped me with this thing. Remember, Main Trading Company in Paris, Texas. Good place to look for your ham radio equipment. Check your club pages out. 4 States Amateur Radio Club, Dallas Amateur Radio, Cowtown Amateur Radio, Shreveport Amateur Radio. Lots of good Facebook pages. Ham Radio Flea Market and Trading Post, Amateur Radio Elmer's, Texas Ham Radio for Newbies, the list goes on. I appreciate everybody who subscribed to the channel. We're at 374. We're going to keep trying to do this because we like helping new hams out. And if you got a guy that's thinking about getting in this hobby of ours, he maybe not licensed yet, hook him up with these videos I make. And tell him if he's got questions, email me. Everybody knows my email's listed on my QRZ page. KB5MIQ is my call. Leave me a comment, send me an email, any questions or video suggestions. Thanks again for everybody who watches. KB5MIQ, Big Boy, 73.